I'd like to introduce Cheryl Echevarria. Did I do that right?
Close, but
Close.
it's
Oh, I don't want to be close. I want to be right on the
Nelson,
money.
will you please?
Nelson, what is it?
Echevarria.
Echevarria. Echevarria.
Easy
I
for
like
you.
this. Easy for me to say. Cheryl Echevarria, owner of Echevarria Travel, located in Brentwood, New York, has been serving clients who are disabled and non-disabled since 2009. She has been honored in 2012 by the Commission for the Blind and Governor Andrew M. Cuomo as Disabled Entrepreneur of the Year. Cheryl herself lost her vision to diabetic retinopathy in 2001 and was a kidney transplant survivor since 2005. She has tried and succeeded in improving travel for people of all abilities and disabilities with specific suppliers, such as Norwegian Cruise Lines, Disney, and the fan there, and currently working with Sandals Resorts in this realm.
Yay.
She is also a member of the National Federation of the Blind of New York and is the current, it says present, but I assume it means president,
Yes, ma'am.
president of the NFB Travel and Tourism Division. We're going to start first with Josephine, who is going to talk about her travel experiences. Josephine?
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
They gave me some sort of mic, but I never know what to do with these things. So if you don't hear me, just say so. I never know when I'm asked to present if it's good to do it before lunch when everybody's hungry and just wants you to finish, or after lunch when you're all filled up and ready to go to sleep. So either way, I don't know. I just have to do the best I can. Okay, what you're going to hear from me today is traveling prior to BADA, before the disability accessible laws, long before there were any kind of protection or encouragement for people who were visually impaired to run around the country. And I was very young, I'm going to tell you the truth. At the end of my first year of college, I was only 18, I was enthusiastic, I was young, and very naive. And I was on the campus one day, and the Dean of Women came to me, and she said, would you be interested in being a student representative to travel to Europe for 2 months in honor of the school? And first I was astounded, and I said, yes, yes. We wouldn't dare say no. To go to Europe for 2 months, everything paid for with a student group? I said, and you know, I thought this was wonderful. Because I did not have a language, a second language, I chose the country. I was teamed up with a group of students going to Holland. And we were in a city called Breda, which was at the time the third largest city in Holland. And each student was placed with a Dutch family we lived with for 6 weeks. Well, we went by boat. I will never forget, we went on a boat called the Andernak. It was 10 days crossing the Atlantic. In those days, 1958, I'll tell you. And we had a few, you know, little lectures about Holland. But the interesting thing was they accepted my dog, but nobody thought about where was he going to poop. They were very good about helping me ship the food over, which I needed. So I kind of walked around and I talked to 1 or 2 of the stewardesses. Finally, the cabin, whatever you call them, crew members, and they finally got me up onto a deck which passengers were not allowed to go to, where they had mostly garbage. But it was really nice garbage. It was paper and wood and stuff like that. And they were very good about cleaning up. So we solved that problem. But I had to negotiate that. When I got to Holland, my Dutch family was interesting. The father was a surgeon, so he wasn't around very much. I had 2 Dutch sisters and a Dutch brother. The girls were a little older than I was, and the boy was about a year older. Well, I arrived in the evening, and the first thing we did was had to sit down for dinner. Now remember, I was not young and naive, and this was my first trip, but I was full of energy. So that, you know. So we sat down to dinner, and there were foods I was not familiar with at the time. A lot of raw fish and things that I just didn't understand. And not seeing, I didn't know what was in front of me. So I kind of feigned being tired, and I said, I was really tired. It was a long trip. To which my Dutch brother turned and said, of course you're tired. Why don't you go upstairs and have a nice cold douche? And I looked at him and I thought, how dare he? But then the father, Mr. C, turned and said, yes, why don't you go up to the WC and have a nice cold douche? Well, I soon caught on that the WC was the water closet or the bathroom. was a nice cold shower. So I survived that. Very good, I said nothing. So the rest of the trip was uneventful, I mean, I did hook up with one or two of the other students and was able to travel around with them because the mother of the house, Mrs. C, was an avid golfer, and she was really not willing to let me out of her sight, being blind and all. She took me with her everywhere and sat me on the golf course while she played golf all day. And I they were wait for her to finish. And then there were other little kind of funny things, like she wanted to surprise me one day, and she had a special treat when we had lunch. And it turned out to be buttermilk, which I despise. And it was warm, no less, because they don't have refrigeration. There's a family with lots of money, beautiful house, but no refrigeration.
Oh.
And that's just the way it was. It wasn't because they couldn't afford it. Well, after we left the Dutch family, we traveled, the group got together, because I was with them for about 6 weeks. Then we traveled to Belgium, Zeeland, which doesn't exist anymore, and we spent a week in Germany. That was interesting, because the first thing that happened, we always seem to arrive at these places at night. The first thing that happened was I was not permitted into the hotel, because I had a dog. So we went back and forth, and the group leader, I guess she wasn't prepared for this. What was I going to do? So I kind of talked to one of the people who worked there. She was actually a cleaning person, like a maid or something. And she told me of a little boarding house above a bakery. So I told the group leader, I said, look, you got to let me go there, I'll sleep on the street. So I got a room above a bakery, which was fantastic. And everybody, all the other students, can't we stay? She shouldn't stay alone. Can't we stay with her? Well, the upshot was
the traveler's side of
yeah.
traveling. And she took some of my stuff, so I got to come up with some new ones. But I just want to reiterate before I go on with my spiel today. You can tell I'm from New York, originally from the Bronx, grew up in Nassau County, now live in Suffolk County, and sometimes I pick up some Puerto Rican from my husband over there who is also co-owner of Echevarria Travel. He makes me look good with all the pictures and videos, and that's my best friend for 22 years. So what I wanted to say is, and which I'm going to be talking about today, is make sure you're planning your trip in enough time to learn about the places you want to go to and get the correct information. I was going to talk about something else, but I think it's important to feed off what Josephine was saying, because I'm sure everybody is going to have questions about her trip and how I can help as well. And if you hear that little beeping, I wear an insulin pump, and that is indicating that I'm running out of insulin, but I'll have enough until I get home. So it's not something that's going to blow up or anything, so I'm just letting you know what that is. As Josephine was saying, is that we live in the United States, and the ADA covers us here. Certain countries now, since Josephine has traveled, do allow service animals. They recognize the blind and other disabilities, especially with the blind. I'm not sure about the deaf community because there's the World Blind Union, the NFB, the ACB. There are a number of different organizations all around the world. So it's becoming more and more educated about people with disabilities. But again, I use a cane, I use a guide dog, I go with sighted guide. So when it comes to using a guide dog, there are certain paperwork and permits. In some countries, you're not allowed to even bring your service animal.
I have a question.
Whoa. Yes.
Save it to
Can we save all the questions until after we're finished talking?
Yeah.
Is that possible?
Yeah.
'Cause- okay, I appreciate it. But I want to get off guide dogs because I'm a guide dog user. A number of people in here are guide dog users, and it's per which country you're going to, if you're going on a cruise ship, if you're going on a land travel. And being a travel professional, I get all the information from that country. I recently did a information for somebody that is going to Antigua. And that's in the Caribbean, and I want to make sure that a guide dog can go to Antigua. You could go by plane, you could go by cruise line, but you got to go to your vet. You got to get certain paperwork. You have to have certain blood tests done that you may not normally have done here in the U.S. every year. but you have to have it done by a certain time, and you have to bring it with you to the airport. You, dealing with a travel agent, I fax all the paperwork to that department, and we make sure you get a permit in your hand, and again, you need to carry that with you. But what I'm talking about today is planning ahead. Let's say Josephine comes to me and she wants to go to Italy. And she says, you know what, I don't know anything about Italy. Is it all paved there? I use my cane only. Well, I'll just say to her, well, no, it's not going to be like walking around Manhattan. I mean, unless you got potholes all over the place. It's not going to be all sidewalks and paved streets. You're going to have cobblestones. You're going to have places where there are no elevators, because they're not going to put an elevator in the Leaning Tower of Pisa. They might fall over. But you have to realize when you're going outside the country what to expect. So maybe you don't know about going around cobblestones, or you don't know how to walk around on grass, or, I always advise people, since I'm blind myself now, is that if you go into a country and you're not sure, and I'm giving you this advice, maybe go out and have somebody like a mobility instructor or a friend of yours to help you, walk around and practice in that area so you're not surprised when you get there. The other thing I mention to people is, because I get this all the time, why do I want to travel when I'm blind? I can't see anything. And you know what it is? I took a group last year to Utah. And everybody said, well, we're not going to be able to see the mountains, and we'll be in the bus all day long. And they said, look, we have other senses besides sight and besides sound. We have smell and taste and touch and conversation and learning about each other's cultures. So, you want to have an open mind when you travel. It's new experiences. Before I became a travel agent, you heard Julie talk about some of the issues I went through when I lost my vision in 2001 and on dialysis. I'm not saying that we all don't have medical problems or medical issues as we're here now being blind and deaf, but our lives are really short compared to the world and how long the world's been here. So, you plan ahead. I sometimes tell people, plan a year in advance, especially that place, your bucket list you want to go to, and you say, oh my God, it's $2,000 plus airfare, what am I going to do? Put a deposit down, pay as you go, 45 days prior to traveling, I need the final balance due to pay off your trip. So there's nothing that's not doable out there. It's up to you where you want to travel to, how you want to get there. Some things I do with my agency, we do bus trips, we do cruise trips, we do almost everything in the world. We do destination weddings. We do presentations like we're doing today. I also do my own internet radio show once a month. And if there's something that I don't know, I go out and find out for you so you don't have to go through. Yeah, the internet is great. They have everything. Problem with the internet, they have everything. You can go to one website, oh, this is great. Let's go to the other website, this is great. But I tell you guys, look, go out, bring me the stuff, let me figure it out once you bring it to me, and say, okay, let's talk about this. What do you want to do? Do you want to go horseback riding, or do you want to be on the beach all day? Do you want to go see the waterfalls? Do you want to go on a culinary arts tour? What do you want to do? And I'll go through it with you and say, okay, this is what I recommend, think about it, and then we'll add or take away or whatever you want to do. Those are some things that I do. I just don't sit there and throw everything at you and expect you to say, okay, I'm going to go for it. You want to know where you're going, when you're going, and how am I going to get there, and how much is everything going to be. Because if you're looking at something and your price is really low and it's like, oh, that's wonderful, and we all know the old expression, if it sounds too good to be true, there might be something wrong with it. So, travel agents are not, dinosaurs, as our president says, and we're just home-based agents now. We're not a lot of brick-and-mortar type businesses. We're still out there working for our clients to make sure that you're getting what you need at a reasonable price that you guys can afford. I don't charge any services. I get exactly from the cruise lines or from Sandals or from any of the other destinations in the world that you want to go to. So you're not paying me a fee. The other thing that I try to speak about is that advocating. You've heard that I work closely with Norwegian Cruise Line, Sandals, Disney. I just didn't, I actually got into working with Norwegian Cruise Line because I heard that in the 1990s that the NFB actually sued Norwegian Cruise Line because they wouldn't allow a blind couple to cruise on one of their cruise ships. So when I actually put out a fundraising cruise that I was doing, everybody yelled at me, "Oh my God, didn't you know we did this and that?" I was like, you know what? No, I didn't. So I reached out, and they're one of those companies that I have access to. A lot of the companies don't, but they're on Facebook, they're on LinkedIn, and I mentioned that, and you go, you know what, Cheryl? We really want to get this bad taste out of our mouth. We need your advice. We need you to go back to the NFB and ask them, what can we do? Since then, I do, once a year, I do a trip on their ship's house here in New York City. We go on the ship, we take a tour of the ship for the day, we have lunch. Everybody has different perspectives of what they're finding that could be better. And I send it back to the access team. They were one of the first cruise lines to reintroduce Braille back on their cruise ships, when all the other ones are going to the electronic devices. One of the ladies that were in the morning program that was with the museums was saying, well, I don't have a computer. You know, people of my age or a little older don't have computers. They know how to use Braille, or they want things, you know, that they don't have to play with a touch screen or something like that, and they get it. So whenever anything new is going on, I actually sit on their travel agent advisory board, and I'm the only disabled person on that board. So I've been on that for the last 3 years. Disney I came into by asking, you know, I've been to Disney many times. My husband and I love Disney, but we found, like with other people, that Disney is not exactly 100% accessible. They've been not only working with me, but with other disabilities to get their consumer websites up and running, to make the parks more accessible. Like with guidebooks now, if anybody here has been to Walt Disney World down in Orlando, Florida, and you're going on a roller coaster type ride, instead of waiting until somebody gets off the ride so you could go on so they could hold your dog, they have portable crates right there. So they actually give me 2 minutes, I'll get the crate set up, and you can put the dog in. They also have now handheld devices called wayfinders that when you go to Walt Disney World, you put the headphones in your ears, and they're accessible to the deaf and to the blind. And they talk in a synthesized voice while you're walking around. You first walk into the Magic Kingdom, and all of a sudden you hear, you are now walking down Main Street, USA. And in the area there are bathrooms and bakeries and, you know, depending on where you are in the park. And when you're on a ride, it goes from the synthesized voice to somebody narrating the ride. So you have the music background of the ride itself. You're not blocked out from that, as well as we and Eric. Well, they're in a canoe with the fishes and the seahorses singing all about them, while you have the music behind you. So, you know, not everything is perfect when we're traveling, but things are getting better for us. Planning when going to the airport. The TSA, I know that TSA, people don't like to hear TSA agents when you go into the airport because, you know, honestly, some of them do not know what they're doing when you get there. But the TSA has come up with things for you to plan. They have a program called TSA Cares. You go online or go to the library and go into TSA, go to the TSA Cares, and they have a number for you to call 72 hours prior to you flying. So whether you're blind or deaf or you're carrying medications, or like myself, I have an insulin pump. Somebody that's in management or somebody that's assigned to you will meet you at the airport before you go through security, so you can go through the lines faster and not feel like you're being, you know, we've all heard the stories of old I'm sorry to use the word old, but an elderly woman in a wheelchair in a diaper that they made strip search because, for some reason they thought she was carrying a bomb or something like that. Okay, I'm sure we've heard all those stories. This was put up that it's not right to do. So it has all the information there, or I could print it out and mail it to you. I don't read Braille myself, but I have somebody that does all my Braille work for me.
I do Braille, baby.
Thank you, ma'am.
Cheryl, I do.
Okay. But things have changed. The ADA is working, better for us here in the U.S. And I'm going to stress that when you're going outside the U.S., just be open-minded that you may not, find everything accessible, or people understanding what you need, and educate yourself a little more before you go into that country. Even when you're there, the person in front of you may not understand that you have a guide dog. Oh, you can't bring the guide dog here. No. Or, they don't understand the white cane, or you're writing Braille or something like that. Just to be prepared. One of the reasons I went into this business in 2009 is I was looking for a travel agent to help me and my family book a trip to Walt Disney World, and the first words out of their mouth was, "You're blind, why do you want to go to Walt Disney for?" And every agent that I was dealing with was giving me the same thing, and I said, you know what, I've been a secretary, a legal secretary, I have all this business background, I'm not working right now, let's see how easy this is to go be a travel agent, because it can't be harder than what I've been doing.
Yeah.
And it's not, and being on the work side of this, since we're at a seminar today about learning about jobs and everything, the travel industry is a $3 trillion business. There's room in it for everybody, whether you're going to be a travel agent, work in a hotel, work on a cruise line, work in reservations, and plus we'd be educating the public as well. I mean, if somebody is actually looking to go into something like this, I have no problem to help you get your foot in the door and go and look into what your dreams are, because somebody gave me hopes and dreams. I want to pass it on to those that are looking to do the same thing or do better than me. I'm sorry, Julia, how much time do we have?
6 minutes.
Okay.
And are there going to be time for questions?
Yeah,
You know
I'm leaving time for questions, so that's why.
I just want to give a little heads up. If you want business cards, my husband has them. He'll be glad to give them out. Some people came in after you came in, so we'll give them out. I work from home. If you want Skype, Facebook, LinkedIn, the whole shebang, I'm on it. Again, I mentioned I have an internet radio show the first Wednesday of every month. So contact me via email. I'll put you on my e-newsletter, and you get the dates. And it's very easy to listen. It's accessible because the NFB of New Jersey actually runs the radio station. But I've had Disney on, I've had Norwegian on, I'm having Globus family of destinations on. Next month I had, for those that are Jewish and are kosher, I had Weberman's Foods on last month. I've had somebody guest on, and I'd actually like to speak to you as well. If you want to be on our show and talk about your experiences in traveling, I'd be glad to have you on as well. Especially you, just because you've had a lot of experiences. And you're not just, the audiences are not just blind people that are listening to these shows. They're everybody that wants to know more about traveling independently. Because we're blind, there are people in the audience that are deaf-blind or deaf, but there are people with other disabilities or not that learn a lot from listening to what I do all day long. So, excuse me?
People who are naive and scared and just don't.
Oh yeah, I mean, people think that because you're blind you can't travel. And we all know that we all got here today, so, one way or another, so, well, still, you got here, right?
Yeah.
So there's when there's a will, there's a way. Please be positive, and that's the only thing I can say about what I do and what I can offer, and I can offer a whole lot more, but we don't have enough time to go
Thank
into
you,
that.
Cheryl. Thank
Can
you,
I
Justine.
add something to what Cheryl said?
Absolutely.
I just wanted to say, because in my talk is a lot of other stuff, but one of the things, no matter how we plan, no matter how we can consult travel agents and whatnot, we need to be prepared for the unexpected. I was in California one year and went to visit a school friend. And then I was gonna visit another friend who, when I discovered, called her house in LA, she was in New York. I hadn't told her I was coming. So the question is, oh my God, I've got 5 days, what do I do now? And the only thing I could do being alone was I then picked up the phone and signed up for the bus trip to go different places. And I did go to Disneyland in California, which was kind of interesting. Again, there were no rules, and I took my dog on several of the rides. I followed people around. I didn't know what else to do, so I followed people around. I hooked up with a couple of families. The kids were wonderful. And the only thing that was a little bit lonely was at night if you didn't have a dinner companion.
Yeah.
But you have to think of the unexpected, right, Cheryl?
Oh, definitely, and I just want to say that I've taken Max on many of the rides at Disney. They just don't allow you to, which is obvious, but if you're on a roller coaster, you really don't want to take the photo. A, they're not strapped down, and God forbid you don't want to fly off the ride. Or something, but he goes, on the kiddie rides or a small world or whatever.
Next, they're gonna have the dog on the television say,
I wouldn't put it past Disney. But anyway, we have time for questions and
Who has
answers.
a question for either Josephine or Cheryl? Let's do it one at a time.
There was the
So,
first lady over there.
The lady
way
in
in
the
the
back,
back row.
In the back.
she's been asking for a
She
while.
wanted to ask a question.
Yes,
Because-
my name is Maricar, and in terms of international travel, I haven't been on a cruise, but I'm curious in terms of how do you get volunteers in terms of support when you're on travel? I mean, in terms of the expenses, if you were going to have someone travel with you, how might those monies be covered? I mean, it's a lot to cover if you're going to be having a travel companion.
I'm going to repeat the question for the recording. So the question is, how do you find the support and in terms of cost, afford the support when you're traveling internationally, when you need a companion?
Was it internationally, a cruising, or was it in general speaking?
No, just generally speaking, if you're going to be flying internationally, you need a companion on the flight or what have you. It's difficult to recruit someone in terms of the costs. If you don't want to travel with a family member, you want a different type of support person.
Well, it all depends on what, I'm going to take this as, you can travel as a single person if you're independent enough, because I know a lot of blind people and deaf people that travel independently. There are single supplement traveling, so even on an airline, you're per person. Traveling on a cruise ship, I'm going to just go back 1 minute. When you're flying either domestically or internationally, you must pay in full for your airfare, because they cannot hold your ticket and, pay a deposit and pay over the months. When you're dealing with a cruise line, you do have, some cruise lines now have single supplements, or you could go as a single occupancy, which means that, you do it the same way you do is put down a deposit, and you could pay monthly, depending on the length and time of cruise you want to go to, or to Disney, or to, Europe, or a land trip, or any other kind of trip. It just depends on how you want to travel, with a companion or without a companion.
She's talking about this cost of that.
Yes, but I guess I'm speaking,
And how do you find the companion, I think, and
it
the
takes a
cost?
lot of money,
Yeah.
and if people are not.
I agree, and you know what, that comes down to you. I don't find companions for my guests. If I'm doing a group, let's say on a cruise ship, and I have somebody else that's traveling singly, you pay for yourself, and the other person pays for themselves. You're not responsible for the person that's traveling with you.
We have someone in the audience who may be able to answer as well. Would you like to?
So my name is Uli Kotenko, and I'm visually impaired, legally blind, and I travel a lot on my own. And one of the answers to your question would be actually any airline will offer special services for blind people, visually impaired people. So when I'm traveling alone, someone picks me up at the check-in counter, takes me to the airplane, sits me into my seat, takes me off the airplane, brings me to the gate that I have to transfer to, takes me out of the plane again, and gets my baggage for me and brings me to the exit of the airport.
Who do you call to arrange that?
You call the airline. And that's not just for the blind,
It's
it's
for
for anybody.
elderly and.
It's for elderly,
Yes.
wheelchair users, whatever.
I'm sorry,
Can we have just one person at a time, please?
Can I just finish that
Yeah.
question? As I was mentioning earlier, the TSA CARES program works the same exact way. They'll either walk you to the plane or walk you to the gate. Let's say you're flying Air France to Paris. The TSA person will walk you to the gate area. From there, the Air France people will take care of you.
But what I'm talking about is even further on, internationally,
Oh,
they
yes.
do the transfers and take you.
They all do
Yeah,
that.
they all do.
For all abilities and disabilities.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, let's have another question in the front row.
Mary?
Mary.
What I want to find out is, my daughter and I and her friend, we went to Disney World one year in time, you know, the up and down Florida buses. And these people tell us you didn't get there in time, the plane left, and they ripped us up and made us pay $50 both ways. So we, because they lied and said that plane, there was no more seats on the plane.
Okay,
That was horrible to do that. So each time they did it, coming back from Florida and leaving New York, they did it to us. We had to rip out $300.
Okay, Mary, do you have a question actually, or are you just sharing a bad experience?
I'm understanding.
Okay.
And I'm wondering what to do about situations like that. Why couldn't we get our money when they lied? And they said that you can board the plane 15 minutes before it takes off. And then you get there and they tell you you can't get on the plane. What do you do?
Cheryl, can you address that?
Yeah, I can. How long ago was that?
Oh, it was a while ago. Delta did this.
Okay, now did you have was it booked with the Disney package, or was it booked, the airlines were booked separate from
It
your
was
package?
booked with the Disney package.
Okay, normally, I don't know what happened back then, but with Disney, when they pick you up at the airport with the Disney Express, let me explain, for somebody who's never been to Disney and you want to go to Walt Disney World, and in your package, as long as you're staying on property, the Disney Magical Express will pick you up at Orlando International Airport with your luggage, and they'll bring you to your resort you're staying to on Walt Disney World property. When you're returning on the day that you're going back to your airport to go home, now they make sure they pick you up 3 hours in advance. They tell you whether you're flying internationally or domestically because of the TSA and security now.
No, I'm sorry. What happened? We used like the public transportation up and down.
Oh, well,
And
then the
we
problem.
got there in time to get the plane, and they wouldn't let us go on.
Well, I think, if I may move this forward, because we only have about 5 minutes, I think it was a, misinformed person, Marion. I think, did you go back to Delta after that and register?
Yeah, they
the
said
complaint.
that they weren't going to do nothing about it.
Yeah, okay, that's unfortunate. I'm sorry about that. Do we have another question? Any other questions? I actually have a question for Josephine. So Josephine, is there somewhere that you haven't been that you are?
If you wanted to go,
She knows good traveling.
Actually, I want to go to Israel.
Israel.
yay!
Yeah.
Me too.
And to go back to some places I've been, but again, I hope now knowing that I'll be a little bit wiser and again, still be prepared for the unexpected. For instance, there are things that no matter how well you plan, the transportation in some of these countries, like for instance in India, to get on and off of a train is extraordinary. They're about 3 feet off the ground. There are no real platforms. You have to climb on and jump off. And I'm serious. And when you don't see, part of the problem is unless you train people to tell you, just like when we're going, somebody will say, stairs coming, and I'll stop and I'll say, which way? Up
Jump.
or down?
One more.
They never tell you up or down. So unless you train people, I was on a cable car. We went to Kashmir this last time, and we took a cable car ride. And the cable cars are way up, suspended. And I had to get on and off, and they don't stop. You have to get on and off while they're moving.
Whoa.
Now, they're moving slowly, but nevertheless, they're moving, and suddenly somebody will say, jump, jump. So, even though you plan as best you can, there are these little things that if you haven't experienced them, and people are not aware, they don't know what you need. Remember, it's not that they're unkind, right? Or that they're mean. They're just totally unaware of what's involved for those of us who don't see. So you have to be a little smarter and prepare questions sometimes. I mean, you learn the hard way. I went to a flight of steps, didn't know if it was up or down, and what do you think happened? I started to trip down the stairs, right? I said, uh-oh, I better find out next time, up or down.
Okay, we have 2 more questions. Karen?
Yeah. Is there such a thing, what if you want accessible tours in a museum or wherever you're going, you want
They have it.
to know if they're accessible tours? How do you find out before?
Oh, you didn't go to the museum?
Well,
No.
in general, I'm sorry,
International.
Oh, internationally.
I'm
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
an educator. I train tour guides to do verbal description and such
Interesting,
tours.
okay.
well, it
But-
all depends on the company that I use. Like, Josephine was mentioning Israel. I know a tour operator that actually used to work for, similar to the Commission for the Blind, but in Israel, and he started his own tour company for the blind. So Israel is excited, he does for the deaf, the blind, people in wheelchairs, so he specializes in that.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was also going to say, that's reason to plan ahead, because my suppliers, they know 90% of my clients are disabled. So they know I'm going to come up with, is this accessible, is this accessible? And what they will do is, like, I recently had a client that went to the Vatican, okay, and they knew my client's blind, and I think they were the only 2 on the trip. But they got to experience some things that a sighted group would not have known about. They got to touch things and feel things, and were presented books to touch that are behind the glass, and they put on special white gloves so you don't get oils from your hands on it. Or, you go into, they were mentioning, what was this, Daniel or Nathan, the gentleman from the
Oh, I didn't stay for the whole
tenement,
presentation.
one of the
Yeah.
gentlemen with the museums, he works with the Tenement Museum here in New York.
Oh, yeah.
And that particular museum, they couldn't put, actual elevators in for people with wheelchairs, so they put a lift in, and you have to go through the basement, and originally in that tenement house was a beer hall. So they redid it, and since he's also visually impaired, to get the full effect, they have a glass of beer in the background, and somebody's shaking it up, so you have to smell the beer. So it all depends on where you're going to get that particular tour. If I know ahead of time that you're blind,
What Spain has.
did I not answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's, so
what
you
is-
were just asking how to find out museums internationally are accessible.
Yes, and I don't want to say anything against you. I'm just saying, as an independent person, maybe I want to do this on my own, and I'm thinking, how do I find out what's accessible? in
You could
different
go
countries?
online, all the museums and all the destinations, anywhere in the world.
So
You
just
go to the tourism boards, like if you go to Prague, or you go to Czech Republic, or you go to Ireland, you go to the tourism board, you get a list of their different museums or tours or something, and you could contact them. They'll either have an international email or an international phone number, and you could speak to them and find out what exactly is
Yeah.
accessible.
Or you can call us.
Okay, we have one more question. Dana?
Yeah, nowadays, I noticed there are not as many travel agents as there used to be. And so to book a flight or to look for hotels, you gotta go online
Yeah.
and navigate these websites that are not always very accessible to the blind using screen readers. You have to, you get like a calendar, you have to select the date rather than just type it in. And, to try to compare, are there any travel sites that are accessible?
They're getting better, and basically they're being forced to do so because organizations like NSA and other disability organizations have tried to get bills passed to make sure that these websites are accessible. So yes, they are getting better, but a lot of them, like, the airlines don't like to do anything unless they're forced to do that, mandatory to do it. There are travel agents out there. We're not all brick and mortar anymore because rents on buildings are extremely expensive. You find more travel agents online like myself. I'm not an Expedia and I'm not like a Travelocity. I have an online presence, but I own my business from my home. And you get me through the phone or through Skype, or if you're close enough to me, I'll come to you, do a presentation, but we are out there. You just need to know where to look.
Great. I think we have to wrap it up. Josephine, Cheryl, thank you so much. How about a round of applause?